during the war, there was a situation where my partner, we made a deal between the three of us, Greg, Jimmy, and I, that we would never go back to Greg's house. The law was out there every night, every single night. Okay, we knew they were there. Greg knew they were there. So he would come out with his wife like they were going shopping, maybe come out the back door of a store and just like the chin. Wherever he went, it was always a big thing. Sure. So we're doing this. All of a sudden, one night, I was in Jersey. I was with my family. And Jimmy gets a beep. We didn't have phones back then. So he calls up Greg on his own phone, first of all. And he says, pick me up. We got to go downtown and see. I forget who it was at the time. Probably Chucky or Jojo Russo, one of the guys that were, a little higher up. Mm-hmm. So Jimmy's trying to talk in code on the phone, but Mayberry, they're driving, they're around and we got to watch out. So he gets frustrated. He says, come for me right now. What do you think? I'm stupid? So Jimmy goes, I remember him telling me, he says, I wish I would have got pinched that night just because we knew they were there and he's telling us not to come. So and Jimmy's got a piece on him. We couldn't be without a gun at the time. Greg comes out. Yeah, and bulletproof vests on. We had them on. Greg comes out, gets in a car. Soon as they drive off, and we had the scanner at this point. We're listening to everything. We had their code. Soon as they pull out, he says something like, I guess, Charlie Cougar, number one target's leaving, which is Greg, blah, blah, blah. Their little code words. Pulls out, and the car follows them. As he gets to the corner, the car's speeding up because right now they were pulling us over, frisking us, searching us, every chance they get. So he makes the right turn. Jimmy's about to throw the gun out the window. And in the book I wrote, Jimmy had a tryout for the Yankees. He's got a great arm. So he's going to throw the gun out. Greg says, give it to me. He takes the gun. He opens the door of the car. Greg. He was getting a little comical toward the end. Because, we know he had the AIDS thing. He was getting a little dementia. He wasn't as sharp. He opens the door, and he almost falls out the door. Jimmy's telling me the story the next day, trying to slide the gun underneath the car that they're driving by. The car behind sees the whole thing. They stop the chase. They pick up the gun. Now they got a gun. They got prints on it. But here's what I'm leading to. Greg tells Jimmy, after he finds out he saw them pick up the gun, you might have to take the pinch for this. All right, it's not the end of the world, and Jimmy would have took it. It's not nice, but you get it. Greg's very important to this war. But here, to make it worse, the next day, we get a call from our lawyer. At the time, it was Joe Benefante, okay? And I went to see him when I came home later on because he tried to save me early on without doing anything wrong. Just, I think he knew about Greg, but ethically couldn't say anything. So he was hinting to me. But anyway, let me get back to the gun story. There's a complaint for me and Jimmy to be arrested. Somehow or another, it gets back to the task force and the FBI that it was me and Jimmy in the car. You know how that deal was made. Greg called his agent. He said, because they would have pinched them too. And now there was a warrant for us for the next 6 months, whatever it was. Ultimately, we all got arrested anyway. But this is all in hindsight. And I got paperwork later on, 302s from a forensics person that was going after this case because of the corruption. And the things that Greg said, I mean, he could have just quieted down a little bit and maybe we would have had a chance. His own son, he didn't help. His own son, Greg Jr. But to be a hero and maybe die the right way, which he couldn't anymore, he tries to help Alley Boy, which he does, and he does a deathbed confession. In that deathbed confession, he could have said, and even on that last indictment, I should have been on top. My son was a scapegoat. I was calling all the shots. He'd get 20 years knocked off. He didn't do that. Okay. He could have said that Greg and Larry and Jimmy drove me places and then they left, so I'm on the outskirts of a conspiracy, but not a shooter on 4 of the murders. He could have done that and he didn't. So all of that comes back to haunt you. And then the best part is I'm standing in front of the judge and I'm going for bail. Judge Weinstein, he asks the prosecutor, do you have any forensic evidence on me, Larry Mazza? They say, no, we don't, Your Honor. Do you have any telephonic? No phone call, no tapes, any photographs of him with anything? No. They asked him one more thing if they had, and they said no. Oh, eyewitnesses? No. He said, I'm inclined to give this man bail. It sounds like his boss is the danger, not him. All right. Common sense, right?
Sure.
The other one, the most corrupt prosecutor, I'm not even going to say his name, probably in history, jumps up and says, but Your Honor, we have Carmine Sessa, and he's corroborated by a high echelon informant. That's Carmine and Greg. He denies me bail. You know, once you get denied bail, you're never coming home, pretty much.
Damn.
But so all of these things, I mean, which is the work? Where do you start with who's the rat? Where does the rat begin? And I always said the chicken or the egg, and I'll say this on any show. If I could go back in time and I was in a position, the very first person, okay, and I mean, I have to be in the legal world, that was called in, was it Joe Valachi, was it Greg, was it Whitey Bowles, whoever it is that you gave a pass to, okay, and opened this door, opened this way of life. If I could change that, I would. I think they should do what detectives do, seasoned police. Go make a case. Don't put me away for life, 10 lives, and let Carmine Sessa, a dog like that, walk the streets, that he put his own brother in jail for life. And you want to do that to me? And I got to tell you one more story on that, if you don't mind, because
go ahead.
While after I went through my protective custody bullshit for several years, I went back into population. And while I was in population, I was with, I'll never use his name because he's a very sharp guy. I like him a lot. He was supposed to be the boss when he got out. Okay. I'm going to call him Buddy. Frank.
Okay.
He comes in and immediately comes over to me. We're talking, getting along real well. We're walking the track together. He starts talking to me a little bit too streetwise. And I stopped him. I says, Buddy, I says, you know, I didn't go out like a hero. He starts spitting at the ground, kicking dirt like Billy Martin, saying you and Jimmy were 110%. He said that Greg Scarpa ruined you. He ruined his life. He's kicking the dirt, spitting. I said, okay, I just want you to know that. We spent another year and a half together. Jerry Capisi writes an article about me, and he had been writing fairly nice articles up until something triggered that he didn't like. I don't know what. And he started not being so nice to me. And they send it into him like he should have something done. You know, he takes me to the bathroom, starts ripping it up, throwing it in the toilet, spitting at it, kicking the toilet to flush it down. He wanted me to know that's how he felt. Very realistic, very understanding to, what was happening, the crumbling of it. So if I could go back in time and not allow a person to come in and just say, oh, somebody, he told me, he said, oh yeah, Larry reported to me that him and, that's not, anybody could go in and say that. It's nonsense. It's terrible. But unfortunately, they're allowing that. The floodgates are open, and it's almost who gets there first. If I would have flipped at the beginning, I would have been home in 2 years or 3 years. I did 10 years because realistically, the only thing I was able to really bring to the table was the corruption. And then they have a sour taste in their mouth for that. But, it is what it is.
Hey, thanks for watching this clip. This clip came from one of my interviews I did in the past. Please hit subscribe if you want to get more clips like this. Also, if you want to watch the full interview, I'll put a link in the description. Or you can hit the button on the screen to watch the full interview.